Hey, what's going on YouTube? Nvidia's newest architecture refresh for their graphics cards is more exciting than usual because they've returned to the 4-digit nomenclature for the naming of their GeForce graphics cards. However, many gamers thought they were done with 1080 forever, but due to the completely coincidental Nvidia naming scheme, it's time to go back to 1080 with Nvidia's GeForce GTX 1080. Today I'm going to be unboxing EVGA's, yes I do have the EVGA version, EVGA's Founders Edition GTX 1080. This is consumer packaging, not many of the review sample unboxings that you've seen earlier. This is what you would get if you order it from Amazon, Newegg, many of the other retailers that have them available, maybe even at your local micro center. Managed to snag myself a Founders Edition by just mashing F5, actually running a macro to mash F5 as soon as they went on sale, because I remember for the launch of the 980, kept mashing F5 with my finger on the product page, and that didn't cut it to get an EVGA version, and I had to settle for a gigabyte GTX 980. But I do have the EVGA version, the Nvidia GTX 1080. This is my second one. Obviously, you've seen that I've already unboxed and attached the water block to my first GTX 1080. So, looking at boxes, it's not interesting. Let's look at what's inside the box. The packaging is standard for EVGA graphics cards. Nothing fancy even for the Founders Edition. For all intents and purposes, Founders Edition just means reference design. You're paying more for what would be the base minimum model in all other architecture refreshes, but return to 4-digit numbering must be that special that the early adopter tax is worth the $100 to $70 premium for the Founders Edition. Talk more about the benefits, actually the non-benefits of the Founders Edition, or why you should not get the Founders Edition going forward. There's nothing collectible about the Founders Edition because there's going to be ongoing availability of these graphics cards throughout the production of the GTX 1080. Even then, technology value, just like cars, depreciates massively. So there's no point in getting electronics over the collectability aspect unless it's like a new in box Gen 1 iPod or something like that. So this is the EVGA poster, kind of like a movie poster for EVGA. And we have card itself. I wish there was more compressible foam for the graphics card packaging instead of the plastic shell. Like not foam, but like the compressy material. Is it called packaging foam? But yeah, I always prefer those to the plastic shell. Okay, so power supply splitter. Can toss that in the drawer with all my 19 the other ones. The manual specifically for it's definitely not specifically for the GTX 1080 because they've indicated 3-way SLI. So this is just, you know, the general EVGA product guide for their graphics cards. 900, 1000 series, another very generic manual, and stickers, and another smaller but not bendy sticker. Very nice. Okay, so graphics card itself. Nobody should be awestruck by the reference cooler because it's very similar to ones we've seen on all of Nvidia's flagship reference models since the GTX Titan, which came out in 2013. So plastic thing over the window PCIe covers, DVI, DisplayPort 1.4, HDMI, display ports, so 3 DisplayPort, 1 HDMI, and a DVI. And also the SLI. I don't have the Pimp SLI bridge yet. I think those are for reviewers only right now, but there is going to be a real pimpin' SLI bridge that is supposedly to optimize the high bandwidth SLI capabilities of the Maxwell architecture. So on to more about the Founders Edition cooler. If you hear that buzzing overhead, my mic might be picking it up. I live close to the hospital, so there's helicopter flyovers for the helipad all the time. So the reference cooler is more of a fashion statement than having any performance advantage at this point, because there are very well documented thermal throttling issues with the Nvidia GTX 1080. One of the advertised features or advertised advantages of the Founders Edition is an enhanced vapor chamber to aid in cooling of the real sleek LED, green LED, flashing green LED that you can enable controls with in GeForce Experience cooler. But in real world tests of the performance, the reference cooler is actually holding back the graphics cards from reaching its optimal potential. Maybe this cooler was super awesome when it first came out for the Titan, and then the 780, and then the 980, but at this point in time it really is a crutch to these graphics cards. Many of the aftermarket non-Founders Editions, which you can probably find for less, will have more efficient cooling than the, still one of the best looking cooler designs, but really not pulling its weight cooler for this generation of architecture. Another advertised feature of the GeForce GTX 1080 Founders Edition is a modular backplate. Polymer, unfortunately, but the modularity comes from you can run it with just this side or just this side or with no sides. I've never preferred having a backplate. Another advertised feature of the Founders Edition is low impedance power delivery. The card as a whole has a TDP less than 250. That is phenomenal power per watt. AMD can suck it. But how much does that translate into actual FPS gain in real benchmarks, not synthetic benchmarks? Probably nothing that you're going to be able to find a difference with or improve your gaming performance over. So I really don't recommend getting the Founders Edition. If you can find other GTX 1080 models available, getting the Founders Edition is basically paying an early adopter's tax to be among some of the first to own it. And yeah, it's something I like to do. I like to be one of the first on YouTube to have not only the GTX flagship model for their new architecture, but be one of the first to have a water-cooled GTX new flagship model. So this video is just going over the unboxing and going over the features and not emphasizing nearly enough not to buy the Founders Edition if you can avoid it. So look for any of the aftermarket cards that will probably come in at a lower price point and with better performance than the Founders Edition. So this video is just a preview of more videos to come with me finishing the water cooling GTX 1080 SLI build, doing some overclocking and running some benchmarks with the overclocked GTX 1080s underwater. Thank you very much for watching this GTX 1080 PC build teaser video. Hope to see you guys back for build updates.